20 minutes after 3 o'clock on this Wednesday afternoon. Welcome back in. It's the post-game show. Jay and Elijah with you. John Whittle, the Big Spur, coming up here in just a bit. Mitch Light of The Athletic will join us in the 4 o'clock hour with John. We'll get Gamecock perspective on what's going on this week as the team heads to Raleigh to take on James Madison. Mitch has been covering the college baseball season. He's based in Nashville, but has been focused on the SEC and the ACC, but we'll get his perspective on things going on beyond what the Gamecocks are up to. But speaking of the Gamecocks, 1:45 airtime Friday, 2 o'clock-ish first pitch, maybe a touch after 2 for TV purposes. We had an idea that this could, of course, everything Elijah's getting ready to tell you, and this isn't about Elijah, because Terry and I said this yesterday too. Everything we're getting ready to talk about is why this game will actually end up being like 2-1 and take 2 hours and 10 minutes. Instead of what the numbers tell us this game could present.
That's right. A 2-1 game would run counter to every bit of numerical evidence that exists between these two teams and the games that they have played so far this season. But look, if you look at the tendencies and how good both teams are in terms of hitting and how suspect the pitching could be, it could lead you to believe that we're in for quite the long baseball game, and that, Jay, you might get 30 seconds of airtime on Friday. We can say hi and bye in one fell swoop, and that will be the show. Because
if they're still playing at 5:15, I'm out.
You're done. No, do not stay at that point. Do not stay. They might be in the 6th inning by that point, 5th or 6th inning by 5:15.
If it's 5:15 and they're still playing, I'm out.
Because JMU and the Sun Belt's a really good baseball conference. It has some good baseball. It has some good pitching.
How many teams they get in? 5?
They got
Southern Miss, Coastal, Troy, JMU.
JMU.
Is that it?
I think so. I think that might be it. But that's
a lot. I mean, that's
still 4. I mean, that's 4. That's more than the Big Ten got.
I want to think there's one more. But anyway, while you're talking, I'll look it up.
Double check that, because the Sun Belt's a really good conference. Mm-hmm. And JMU ranks first in a lot of big hitting categories. They score over almost 7.5 runs a game for the entire season, but they led the Sun Belt in batting average. As a team, they hit 300, a flat 300. That is phenomenal. Yeah. They have 5 players in their lineup with batting averages over 300. So they get on base really well. Their best, in terms of batting average, Fenwick Trimble, yes, that's a baseball player, not a Notre Dame lacrosse player, hitting .371 this year.
Fenwick Trimble, I think that's where like the 1947 Open Championship was played.
Fenwick Trimble, yeah. Oh, yeah. Not to be confused with that either.
Beautiful course.
Open Championship course, Notre Dame lacrosse player, 1890s assassin. There's a lot of names. There's a lot of things that Fenwick Trimble could be, but he's also James Madison's most reliable hitter at .371. They don't have a ton of power. They got some. They don't hit as many home runs as, say, South Carolina. They've hit 10 fewer this season, but they make up for it with that batting average, and they're tops in the Sun Belt in slugging percentage because they're very aggressive on the base pass. They're a lot like Kentucky. That's kind of the comparison I've got. They put the ball in play a lot, and they're really fast. They've stolen 100 bases this year, and they've attempted 130 steals. So they're aggressive when they're on the base pass. And if they were in the SEC, they would have finished second in stolen bases this year, behind Kentucky, which is only at 102. Compared to James Madison's 100. Not many teams have cracked triple digits when it comes to stealing bases. But here's the big thing. Here is the big stat that, if I'm a Gamecock fan, might give me a little bit of pause when it comes to this first-round matchup on Friday. And it is in regards to their aggressiveness at the plate. They've only walked 249 times, which is 9th in the Sun Belt. So pretty low. And to give you a comparison, South Carolina has walked 367. So nowhere near they take the account of walks that the Gamecocks do. But they're also second fewest strikeouts in the entire Sun Belt. They've only struck out 406 times this year. South Carolina has struck out 594, which is a lot. It's on the higher side of Division I baseball in total. So what that tells me is that this JMU team gets the ball in play a lot. They're not walking a ton comparatively, and they're not striking out a lot comparatively. They're putting the ball in play, and they have a high slugging percentage despite maybe not having the highest home run total, meaning they will stretch singles into doubles or triples, or doubles into triples. They're aggressive on the base pass, which helps that slugging percentage number go up, And for a team like South Carolina, who just committed 12 errors in their 5 games in Hoover, a team that puts the ball in play a lot is going to scare me a little bit.
Yeah.
They put the ball in play a lot. If you field the way you did in Hoover, you're going to be sweating this bad boy out when it's 10-11 in the 8th inning. It's going to be really, really tough. Now, on the flip side of that, James Madison has a horrific ERA of an ERA of over 6 and a whip of over 1.62. They will give up a lot of runs. But if you want to keep them from just outgunning you, you got to be able to make plays in the field because they're going to make sure that ball is put in play.
Right. Man. There's a lot of reasons to think this time of year, especially, that this is going to trend more towards the long. I think this whole tournament. I think this whole baseball season, as we talked about, with a few exceptions, has just felt more like. Again, it sort of proves that life is a lot more cyclical than it is linear. I'm not saying we're going back to the. I said to you before, we're not going back to the old gorilla ball days on a regular basis where every game was 11-10. But we've had a lot more high scoring games this year, and there's just and whether that's, I think it's like a lot of things, Elijah. I said this, and I'll blend a couple of things in to make my point, but yeah. I remember when baseball was expanding, Major League Baseball was expanding. And one of the biggest concerns was that when you do that, it's not about spreading hitters around or fielders around. It's about spreading pitchers around. And the depth of pitching gets shallower, And I think the same kind of things are happening right now in college baseball where – yeah, Arkansas and A&M have a nice staff, and those two coaches have always in their career. Coach Van Horn's been at Arkansas forever now, and Schloss has been at A&M a few years. But at TCU, he had multiple World Series teams, and it was you can hit, but they're good. They're good at pitching. But in the transfer era. I think a lot, you get one or two guys that might be really good at it, and everybody else is just kind of fending for themselves. I didn't think Tennessee's pitching was as good as the numbers suggest, but you know what? It's good.
And it helps they have one reliable starter who normally gets them 6 innings into a game.
Yeah. But
only have one of them.
Right.
But that's been good enough.
That's what I'm saying. Like you look at Wake, that seems to be, those are teams that are more of an anomaly these days. So, but the stat about putting the ball in play, that's one. And, Mark is right. In conference games, Carolina fielded pretty well.
Almost 98%.
Yeah, you'll take that. You'll live with that. But for whatever reasons last week, man, I still don't know. Like I say, I think a lot of the errors had a contribution from a mental mistake in terms of what the situation was. And then you magnify that with the physical error. Again, at any level of baseball, I think coaches, managers, whatever, are driven crazier by the mental mistake than the physical error. But when both happen,
naturally, yeah,
then it's just it's a bad look. Speaking of the defense, speaking of the pitching, our good friend, good work there. Keep that stat handy because that was one. We should go ahead and start putting an over-under on time.
Time and runs and
over-under 335. Over-under 335.
Ooh, and your boy's leaning over.
That's what we'll get it a big one. See what John Whittle has to say about that, too. He, of course, on the beat, the Big Spur, knows all things Gamecock baseball. He'll share his thoughts looking ahead to Friday afternoon when the postgame show continues.